So, hi, I'm Simon Hall. I'm joined by Hassan, which is CEO of REFSIX. And I'm going to say huge thanks. And I'm going to go straight in, Hassan, and say that for those who don't know what REFSIX is, do you want to explain to them what you are?
Sure, yeah. So firstly, thanks for having me and for inviting me on to have a chat. What is REFSIX? So we're an app for football referees at any level of the game to help track your matches, whether that be help you with timing, help you with match administration, and also help you with performance data. So tracking your physical performance in games, keeping a log of all your matches that you do as a referee, all in one place on your smartphone and on your smartwatch. That's what we do.
Fantastic. How did you come up with the idea? How long ago was it? 'Cause I know we messaged years ago.
Sure.
How old is it now?
It depends. So the idea came about when I actually first took the referee course, and that was probably about 10 years ago. So what surprised me, or I think it was a bit of everything at the time, I was studying computer science, the iPhone had came out, and people were starting to migrate towards apps. When I did the referee course, I just thought, how good would it be, instead of writing on a piece of paper, how good would it be to use your iPhone? So that's where the idea came about, started developing a prototype for my kind of uni thesis degree dissertation, and then kind of left it there, to be honest. Didn't really know how to start a business or put it out there, and didn't really know what to do at that time. Went and got a proper job, and over time, just left the idea on the shelf, so to speak, and then the Apple Watch came out. And then all of a sudden I thought, okay, well, if it's possible to bring those ideas that we had on the iPhone onto an Apple Watch, that's the perfect form factor really for a referee, because you can see referees wearing a watch in their games. It was hard to envisage referees running around with a phone on their wrist or in their. So we thought, okay, cool, let's see if we can take some of the ideas that we had, build it onto the Apple Watch, and it worked. We kind of got a few people using it in the first few years, and so that would have been 2016, 2017.
Wow.
So about three and a half years ago now that we had our first prototype. We had about 50 early users using it in 5 different countries, testing it out for a season. We realized kind of things that worked well, things that didn't work well, and then since then we just continuously try and iterate, make it better, try and bring it to more devices, more smartwatches, adding new features. Football we thought was fairly linear across the world, and in most cases it is, but since the last few years IFAB have allowed different rules to be used by competitions in different countries, we're getting a lot more of a variety of football across the world. So that means, some countries are doing temporary dismissals or sin bins, some aren't. Some countries require referees to record goal scorers, for example. In England, we don't. In some cases, they're playing quarters instead of halves. We've had to look at adapting how we work to how football is evolving around the world.
Are we allowed to ask what the next dev is?
In terms of what the new features are?
Yeah,
and stuff?
What's new at the moment, and what's the next one?
Sure. So one of the big things that we've done for this season, and we wanted to get in as the season started, was really off the back of some guidance from the FA. Due to the kind of period we're going through with the pandemic, there was a lot of, there was some feedback around, should we be still giving team sheets based on paper and handing that to the referees and the managers, and can we reduce that because of potential spread of the virus, as well as cash payments, right? So what we did is create 2 features in our app, very simply requesting team sheets and requesting payments. So it enables a referee to use our phone app to send a message to the managers of the teams with a link that's basically a digital blank team sheet. They can fill that out and it gets sent back directly to the referee into our app. Really easy for the referee to use, super easy for the club because they don't have to download anything, they don't have to log in, they just fill it out and send it back. So that's something that we've launched, and actually the Southern Amateur League in London are actually working with us to try and roll it out across their league, and we've been on calls with their clubs and their referees, so that's great. And we're hoping that we can pick up more leagues as we go. And the payments is very similar. It's basically an ability for the referee to send a link to the manager with their PayPal account or a Monzo or Starling account and say, here's the amount I'd like to be paid for the game, and here's a link to pay me digitally. So those are features that we wanted to get in pretty quickly for the season. So that's what's just happened. In terms of the big next steps coming forward, we're looking at actually supporting Garmin. So we should be hopefully building our app for Garmin. Well, it's being built now, and hopefully releasing that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how that goes. And we're starting to look at kind of what we found is a lot more referees are going out in teams where other referees are using our app too.
Yeah.
As we started off, it was just one referee here and there were using it, and now people are going out in teams of 3, and maybe 2 are using it, or even 3.
Yeah.
And our experience right now is fairly kind of a one-on-one relationship. So me as a referee has to create the match, my assistant has to create the match, etc. So we're looking at how do we share matches across referees, so one person can fill in the team sheet, it gets shared amongst the team, for example. So that's some things we're looking at. There's a whole host of stuff we're trying to look at, fitness training, a lot around community features, enabling people to potentially follow other referees, etc., and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a ton. Yeah,
it is. Honestly, it sounds absolutely spot on, and like you say, once you've completed one dev on your system, there is another one, and then there's another one. That's how technology works.
I think we've got ideas of features for the next, to fill us up for the next 2 or 3 years. The beauty with most of them now is they're all coming from our users. We've got thousands of referees around the world using our app, and we get feature requests every day, basically. Hey, have you thought about this, or would you add that? And those are things we make a note of everything. We look at like how often features are being requested, and we figure out how big an improvement would adding that feature be. So yeah, it is pretty exciting.
Yeah, because when you say there, it's round the world now. Is it the FA Cup, one of the prelim rounds? Was it a third or something of people?
Just very close to a third, just under a third of matches were refereed where at least one of the officials was a user.
Yeah.
There were many games where there was 2, and there was one that was all 3 of the officials were actually using our app, which is pretty cool to see.
No, that is good. That, I mean, I watched a young referee at weekend. I think it was only about a 5th or 6th ever game, and she was actually writing on the back of her hand each goal.
Yeah.
And she was wearing an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
So you can see where I'm going to go with that one. So my daughter's actually going to go and watch her again on Saturday, and we're going to have a proper chat about the pen on the back of the hand. And
I mean, look, we initially thought when we built the app is like we're really laser focused. Every referee should use all the features, etc. And what we've learned is that's not really what we should be. What we should be is a suite of kind of tools that referees can use, and they can dip in and out of certain features, right? So a lot of referees use our app just to keep track of time and record their physical data, so how far they're running, their heat map, etc. And some will use it to the other end, where they'll use it to do all of the match admin, yellow cards, sin bins, etc. And what we need to do is basically tell people that they can use it however they want to use it to benefit their game. And what we're seeing is a lot of referees using the app in a variety of different ways that helps them or brings them value for what they're looking for. So yeah.
And it's available on Apple and on Android.
Yeah, so you need to have an iPhone or an Android phone, and it will work with Apple Watches, Android watches, Samsung watches right now, Garmin soon. But again, this is where like we've always talked about watches. If you just wanted to use our app to keep track of your matches, so you could Well, actually, one, you could use the phone in a match if you so wished.
Yeah.
But even if you didn't, you could just use the phone app to be able to keep tracking your matches. So you could add your fixture after the game. You can go in and change it to a result, add the goals, add the cards in the phone. So it becomes a log of your career without ever needing to use a smartwatch on the pitch. So again, variety of different ways to
Advantage.
use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just gonna go on because you have a heat map which
Yeah.
shows people where they're running, where the main things they're covering, and I've seen a few, and I'm going to post a few of them on underneath this, because you can tell the ones where they've got assistance and where they haven't.
Yeah.
That really stands out for me. But you've also, I saw one at weekend where somebody put their sprints on.
Yeah.
Can they click on them individual sprints and see what speed they were doing, so they know how many's dynamic and how many aren't?
No, but let me answer that question in a variety of different ways. So what we have in our app in terms of performance data is we show you after the game your distance that you cover in the whole game,
Yeah.
your distance per half, so your first half distance, second half distance, if it ever goes to extra time too. So you can see how far you're covering in each half. We show you a graph of your distance every 5 minutes. So what that gives you a sense of is, are you covering the same distance all the way through the game? Is it dipping off as the game is going on? Which could be that I'm getting tired as the game's going on, but it also could be the game's dying. Like it's 5-0, no one's really exerting
Yeah.
themselves, and your performance shows that. So that's distance. We then show you a lot of positioning data. So our heat map, we think, is one of the best in terms of showing you position where you're covering on the pitch, but also kind of showing you more detail in terms of where you're staying on the pitch for longer periods of time. So it goes red where you're there often, and it'll go blue and green where you're reaching, but not there for a lot of time. So we have a heat map. We have a card map. So if you use our app to record cards, show you where you give your cards on the pitch. And then we have a sprint map, which basically we have 3 different types of sprints, a low intensity sprint, a medium intensity sprint, and a high intensity sprint. And we basically show you arrows on the pitch whenever you do any of those sprints. So you can see after the game, how many sprints did you do, at what velocity were those sprints. In terms of our categories, you can't click on them at the moment to see the individual speeds. What we found is most people like to see the generalized kind of view of it. They're not specifically monitoring the exact sprint speed.
Yeah.
They know, okay, well, that was a high intensity sprint for me. Okay, great. That was a low intensity sprint. That was great. So that's what we do at the moment. And then the last thing we show is of your distance and of your activity, how much as a percentage have you walked, have you ran, have you jogged, have you sprinted throughout the game. So it kind of builds a profile of your activity exertion during the game. So distance is great. It shows you 10 kilometers a game, but actually for most of it, 4 kilometers you were walking, or 8 kilometers you were walking, you did like half a kilometer sprinting. You're starting to build a profile of your performance.
Yeah. I think that's quality. That, I mean, the heat map would be good, because my friend that I mentioned that doesn't have a smartwatch, that surprises me, his heat map would be totally the centre circle. I don't think he ever gets out of it, so that's why he probably ain't got one.
Well, I mean, look, the heat map will definitely showcase that for referees, and I'm not going to lie, in many games it has looked like that for me, and that could be down to the performance of the 2 teams, really. And what I've noticed in my stats, and it's very a high correlation, is my distance. My highest matches where I've got really great distance and really probably biggest coverage on the pitch are the games I was assessed on. It's completely like, so it must mean that subconsciously or consciously I'm definitely working a lot harder in those games that I'm assessed. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, I'm pretty confident it's not the right thing to do, but I'm picking up my data, So, definitely the data will reveal things, but it's also key. It's also good to note that it also is match dependent, right? Like, different matches will, if it's 8-0 to one team, you're always in one half.
Yeah.
For that, and you're probably not going to cover as much distance. Doesn't mean, just because you did 7 kilometers in a game and your average is 9, that you've had a bad game or you've been tired. It doesn't mean that at all. So yeah, it's really important to take the data, understand it, but then also with your knowledge of the match that you've just refereed, understand why your data is showing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it is, because I do tend to look at my fastest sprint just out of curiosity because of my age, and I like to see if I'm still moving. And I always remember the sprint. I always remember that sprint, the one where it's recorded the highest. I always remember it because it has always been a counter-attack. Because as people know in Sheffield, we don't tend to use club assistants. We're always on our own. It's just what we do. That's a discussion for another day. But we do. We cover some ground. But at weekend, I had a young lad ask me because he felt the ball was in the air more than it was on the ground. And he says, I couldn't judge anything. And I said, you've just got to get out wide and watch what you can.
Sure.
There's no point in running because as quickly as you're going to get to near a defence, it's going to be at the other end of the field. You've just got to get out wide and a bit more central. And you're totally out your comfort zone, totally, if you're like me. So what level are you now?
I'm a 5. I'm a happy level 5. Pretty happy there. And, the business is, taking a lot of my attention and time. So, maybe in the future I'd look at trying to make way up if I can. But just really comfortable and happy where I'm refereeing wise and getting a lot of joy seeing my friends progress up the ladder. Seeing a lot of our users progress up the ladder is probably my biggest joy.
That's great, yeah.
And that's probably where my focus is. In my refereeing world, focus is very much on app and how we can help referees.
Now that's good, because one of my questions really is what do we need to do to keep referees refereeing?
I mean, that's a question for a whole day's worth of discussion. Truth. This year is going to be even more difficult based on the pandemic, right? There's going to be a lot of change this year. Already we've seen games called off really close to the kickoff because of positive cases. There are some referees who don't want to go and referee just in case there was a positive case and have to do some period of isolation. There are referees who see themselves at risk, so they don't want to referee. That on top of the previous issues around keeping referees in the first place is going to compound it, right? So what do we need to do? I'm not sure. I look around different countries to see what people are doing really well, what they're doing differently. Differently is probably the better way. I don't know if it's well or not. I haven't seen their numbers. But things like in Wales, they do an online referee course. Pros and cons for that, definitely. Their price is different. I think it's £25 instead of a higher fee in the UK, in England. Again, I don't know the success of that, but that's a different way of doing things. Maybe it's something to explore and come up with, right? What I know is there's a lot of young people coming through the referee courses right now. I've always thought that I've been out to America and seen how they play soccer out there. And what they have is complexes. They have 10, 15 games going on at the same time, which makes it really easy for support groups like an RA to go and have 2 or 3 volunteers that can go and have a look and keep an eye on it. Whereas in England, in many games I've been at, you're the only pitch game of football going on in many parts of the country, right? So it's really hard to mobilize your volunteer workforce to get the best, mentorship and advice to referees in those first 5-6 games, because you can maybe only see 5 or 6 referees in 6 weekends. Whereas if they were all in one bigger place, you might be able to see 10 every weekend. So those are little things that we can't really solve for. In Italy, they give free kit to all the referees, or I think they used to. I'm pretty sure they still do, but they give free kit every year. to referees. So one year they'll get they do have different color kits, which is different, which is obviously different here. But one year they'll give them a black kit and a short sleeve. The next year they'll give them the yellow kit, long sleeve, etc. So that helps. I don't know what the right answer is.
No.
I think the key thing for me is the referees are a major part of the game, as we all know. And how do we foster the community, right? You know, the RAs, the meetings that we have with RAs is a great example of, you know, referees wanting to feel part of the community, but when they go out on the pitch, you know, you're on your own or you're part of the three. How do we foster a bigger refereeing community that people can feel part of, you know, feel part of the squad, like a team, like a player would.
No, I get you, yeah.
And I don't know what the solution is, but that's what I think. If there are things that we can do, that whether it be us, whether it be the FA, whether it be the RA, whether it be anyone, anything that can foster those types of things will help keep referees refereeing, and then and see where it goes.
No, definitely. I mean, the gap's getting. I feel the gap. I mean, somebody might tell me I'm wrong, but the gap between clubs, players, managers, and referees, I think, is getting huge. I do think there's a canyon growing, and somehow we've got to stop that between us. We've got to. And again, it's a similar one. I don't know the answer, but we've got to try and get everybody involved in all the decisions on why the decisions are being given or why they're not being given. I mean, as an idea, do you think our referees should speak after games, or a spokesperson from the PGMOL maybe showing on a video and have a 30-minute training session on the weekend's decisions?
So I have different viewpoints on this. So I don't think referees should be speaking off. We're talking specifically elite level here. That's the
we'll talk elite at the moment. Yeah,
sure. So my belief is that referees shouldn't be speaking after the games specifically to like a manager would be, right?
Yeah.
Because the journalist is there, or the interviewer is there to ask about negatives. They're not going to say, "Oh, you played a great advantage in the 4th minute. Talk us through that." They're not going to do that, right? They're going to say, "You gave that penalty. We've seen it shouldn't have been a penalty. What is it?" It shouldn't be. VAR should have solved that now.
Yeah.
I think VAR has been a great help for grassroots referees.
Yeah.
Because I think it's shown just how difficult refereeing is. You know what I mean? So
totally no.
VAR has actually, in my opinion, benefited referees at the grassroots level. I might be completely wrong now, but it feels that way. So no, I don't think referees should be speaking after the game. I know Dermot Gallagher does Ref Watch on Mondays on Sky Sports News, and they go through the different clips and stuff like that. And I know a lot of referees that watch that as great. I know a lot of fans that watch that, and they appreciate that someone's having a conversation about the incident. Most likely they disagree with it because they are biased. I'm a Newcastle fan, and just probably now I'm getting to the point where I can see it objectively, but I'll always see it through some form of, rose-tinted spectrum. It should have been a penalty when it clearly wasn't a penalty, but, fans are always going to feel bias and have bias. But I know Dermot Gallagher does that on Mondays. It seems to work really well. And I think there's an opportunity at grassroots level where this can come out in the future, because a lot more games are being covered, a lot more games are being videoed. And in truth, the majority of grassroots referees are 5, 6, and 7, right? Level 5, level 6, level 7.
Yeah.
95% of referees are that level. The Premier League is a very different football to what we would, So actually, the Premier League is a whole different world away from what we get on a Saturday and a Sunday. So it would be great if there's an opportunity where someone can go and watch or record some of those clips and share them. I think that's the next stage of refereeing education would be, let's stop watching clips from the Premier League and judging if it's a penalty or not, or how to get better at, man managing, because that's not our weekend. We're dealing with completely different personalities. completely different life problems for these players.
Yeah.
And how do we watch more grassroots games and clips from grassroots games and learn from them? Because that's the better way to learn. It's just, can we get them recorded is the next question.
Well, we could. I've got access to them cameras, funny enough. But I totally agree with you on the grassroots. But going back to something you've said earlier about the hubs in America,
yeah.
If you've got 10 cameras over 10 pitches where there's 10, 15 referees,
yeah,
the amount of learning that can come from one central area,
yep.
I think could be. I really, really do. Now we're on to something on what we're doing on there. So I'd say I'm not going to announce it, but in a few weeks' time, we're hoping to do something very, very similar to what we've just said.
Right.
We're working on it right now.
That's brilliant. Look, it doesn't just benefit referees; it will benefit the clubs, right? Like clubs are recording. At least I'm based in Sussex, and there's a company down here called Your Instant Replay that are going around videoing a lot of games right now, and they're doing it for a variety of different reasons. The clubs are paying to get the videos done, but they're doing it for a variety of reasons. One is they want to be able to create highlights and put it on YouTube so people can watch it back, right? Two is tactically, what are we doing? How do we get better? How do we improve? But that's also benefiting the referee because the referee can watch it back now and see how can I improve? How can I do? It's also helping referees because they can say, look, I got it right. It can hinder referees because it can show where they got it wrong. Again, it's just from one camera angle, so it might not necessarily be wrong, but it could look wrong from that angle, and that's a different conversation. But my belief is if we can get games recorded at the grassroots level, it helps with clubs from a promotional standpoint, it helps with clubs from a tactical standpoint, it helps with referees from a tactical standpoint.
Yeah.
I also think it helps with referees' safety.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden everyone knows a game's being recorded, we're hoping, or I believe, the level of abuse that referees may receive would again dramatically fall because everything's being recorded, right? So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question in any way.
No, you're fine. I think it's spot on. I think it is because you've just said about the fact that clubs are looking back. So they've shouted that offside, you wrote that wrong, and then they look it back and say, oh, wow, we got it right.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're seeing that little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at, we mentioned elite level, I can't remember who the assistant was on John Moss's game at Palace at weekend, but Zaha goes on and scores and then the flag goes up.
Very cool.
The speed of what Zaha moves at and the distance that he was offside, it was such an amazing decision. And as a referee, as an assistant referee, I 100% have 110% respect for that decision.
Yep.
That decision was up there at one of the hardest.
Look, I think our assistant referees are some of the best in the world. Yeah. I think, and again, VAR has helped show just how good they are, right? Like, if we're talking about whether you agree with the lines on the pitch for offside or not, or how thick they should be or whatever, look how tight those decisions are happening. Yeah. And it's almost humanly impossible to get them right on the field. But the assistant referees at top level are doing a hell of a job getting them, in most cases, right. And if they aren't right, they're out by millimeters, you know?
It is,
I think you can accept that.
And it is, and I totally agree. So there you go, another advantage, another great advantage. It really is. Right, I'm going to finish with the referee family top tip.
Yeah.
Okay. What top tip would you give any referee?
Just one?
Just one.
Other than go out and grab REFSIX.
Two then.
Yeah, no, I think build a group around you, a team around you. A group of mentors, or I can't remember I might be putting words in his mouth, but I feel like I was at an event. It was definitely an SG1 referee. I'm pretty confident it was Michael Oliver, but I might be completely wrong. He said, I'm not sure it is right now. I'm not sure who it was. A select group referee said he has a board of directors as his refereeing career. He has different people that add value to him, who he can chat to about different things and different topics, overseeing his career from the outside almost. And I love that idea. And you know, and they don't need to be formal relationships, but they're like a couple of coaches or a couple of friends at your level, a couple of friends at the level above, a couple of friends at the level below.
Yeah.
And they're just going to be people that you're going to want to ring up after a game and say, look, I've had a really bad game, you know, help me feel better. It might be, hey, I've had an amazing game, bring me down back to earth.
Yeah.
It's always great to celebrate. You should celebrate small wins, but don't let it get ahead of yourself. And then, the people that are going to help give you advice to get to that next level, whatever your goal is going to be. So I love this idea of, putting down like 5 or 6 names that you're gonna use throughout your career that are gonna help you to that next level. And that might change over time. They might not be the same people year in, year out, but build your board of directors, I think, or your mentorship group, and give back. Don't just take, give back. Try and offer that to someone else who looks up to you because you're in a privileged position. You might be a 4. How do you go and help a level 7 or 6 get to where you want to do? That would be my top tip, because that kind of touches on the other things that we talked about: community, being part of a community, and all of those things. So that would be mine. And REF6, and if you want to, give me a shout and we can help you figure all of those out. But that would be my number 1 top tip.
That's brilliant. No, fantastic. So, well, I will leave that there as the last question. Thank you so much for Hassan for joining us.
Thank you.
And then I'll make sure some links there so anyone can get in touch with you.
Perfect.
Thank you.